Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some pretty bold claims from our sources. The central idea that for centuries, hidden structures of power have been working on a plan to reshape our world. We're going to look at what that plan is supposed to be, how they say it works, and where these battles for control are being fought right now. All right, let's just jump right in with this quote. This was said nearly 75 years ago, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. It suggests that this idea of a global government isn't some new thing. It's been on the table for a long, long time. So, our first source, an article by Larry Romanoff, lays out this idea that for at least 200 years, there's been this consistent underlying plan to basically dismantle national sovereignty and replace it with a whole different kind of control. And this wasn't just some old idea. Decades later, you have figures like David Rockefeller. The source claims he basically admitted to a long-term plan, one developed far away from any public discussion, all aimed at setting up a new global order. So what's the endgame here? Well, the source calls it supranational sovereignty. In this model, yeah, countries would still exist on the map, but the big decisions, we're talking trade, finance, natural resources, would ultimately be in the hands of a higher, unelected authority. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This slide breaks down the alleged strategy. It comes from a 1924 speech that's attributed to Montagu Norman, who was the governor of the Bank of England at the time. The source presents this as a literal playbook for gaining control, from using debt as a weapon to getting the public totally distracted by political infighting. Okay, so that's the grand objective. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do these sources say this shift in power is actually achieved? How does a theoretical plan like that become a real-world system? Well, the Romanoff article points to something called ISDS. It claims this legal framework, which was created way back in the 1960s, basically gives massive corporations the power to sue entire countries if they pass a law that might hurt their profits. It's a way to override national sovereignty. And this wasn't just some dusty legal theory. According to the source, this very concept was supposed to be embedded in huge trade deals like the TPP. The article argues the TPP was never just about trade. It was a secret attempt to permanently lock in corporate power over the public, making its rules impossible for any future government to change. But it's not always about these giant, secret treaties. A different source we looked at describes a meta-constitution, where control is much more subtle. It's not about laws passed by governments, but about technical standards. A company just has to meet these standards to do business, and boom, a whole system of control is enforced through a simple contract. And just to add another layer to this, a source from the UN's review points to this incredibly sharp warning from strategist Zbigniew Brzezinski. Way back in 1997, he warned that an aggressive U.S. foreign policy could accidentally create the very thing it feared, a powerful bloc of nations pushed together by shared complaints, ready to challenge the whole system. So where do we actually see these alleged power struggles playing out? Well, the sources identify a few key arenas, and they range from the marketplace all the way to the doctor's office. The Romanoff source, for example, points to what it calls corporate defiance, like Apple supposedly just ignoring national warranty laws. It also highlights the fight over essential resources, citing the chairman of Nestle, who argued that water shouldn't be a human right, but a privatized commodity with a price tag. But the battleground isn't just legal or financial. According to these sources, it's getting way more personal. Our health. One Substack we looked at, for instance, makes the case that public health itself has become a new front, claiming a link between recent medical treatments and a hidden health crisis. And to back this up, the source zeroes in on this specific number from a peer-reviewed Italian study. It claims the study found a 54% increased risk of hospitalization for breast cancer among vaccinated individuals when compared to the unvaccinated. And according to the source, it wasn't just breast cancer. The same study apparently identified other statistically significant jumps in hospitalization risk for bladder and colorectal cancer too. The author of the Substack piece sees this data as what they call a formal signal of a broader increased cancer risk. And as you can probably guess, this whole debate has absolutely erupted into the political sphere. A source from the Coffee and COVID Substack points to a recent post from Donald Trump, and he frames this as nothing less than a political war over data transparency, demanding Pfizer release everything right now. So when you're faced with all of this, these really complex and, let's be honest, pretty alarming narratives,
Our final source shifts the focus. It moves from the global stage right down to the individual, and it offers a kind of framework for how to respond.
A document we found, with the pretty memorable title Tinfoil Hat PDF, suggests the very first step is to just trust your gut. It encourages you to pause when a story feels a little off, especially one that's designed to make you feel angry or scared, and just ask, why this story? Why now? From there, it lays out this multi-step process for what it calls reclaiming your mind. The advice is pretty straightforward. Unplug from the constant noise, trust your own reasoning over what you see on a screen, and maybe most importantly, build up your mental resilience. The argument is that independent thought is like a muscle. You have to use it. And that really leaves us with the big final thought, doesn't it? It's a question that synthesizes all the claims from all our sources today. It asks us to think about what happens not just when these alleged structures of power exist, but what happens when they all start to connect, to converge, and to reinforce each other. What does that world look like?